When I read my parents' will, I couldn't believe my eyes. They had left everything to my cousin. But little did I know, karma had its own plan. Stay with me as I share how I stood up and showed him what family really means. And if this story moves you, don't forget to support our channel. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share it with your loved one. In the middle of a hot Lagos afternoon, Adana Okri sat frozen in the leather chair inside her late parents' lawyer's office. The air smelled of old books and air freshener, but all she could hear was the ticking clock on the wall. Across from her sat Nkiru, her cousin, the one everyone in the family called the Golden Girl. Nkiru's red lipstick gleamed as she smiled like she already knew how this would end. Mr. Babajid, the family lawyer, cleared his throat and unfolded the papers. This is the last will and testament of Chief and Mrs. Okri. His voice was steady, but each word seemed to slice through the air. As he read, Adana's fingers dug into her knees. The family house in Ikoyi, her father's company shares, her mother's jewelry, even the old Toyota she used to drive them to the hospital before they passed. All of it, every single thing, had been left to Nkiru. The room went quiet. A few relatives shifted awkwardly, their eyes darting between the two cousins. Nkiru leaned close, her perfume heavy and sweet, and whispered, "Guess they knew who really deserved it." Adana's heart thudded hard against her ribs. Her throat burned, but she didn't let a single tear fall. Instead, she stood up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from her skirt. The lawyer called her name, but she didn't answer. She just turned to the door and whispered, steady and calm, "We'll see." Outside, the Lagos sun hit her face. Her world had just fallen apart, but something fierce was waking inside her dot. Adana lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above her. The lawyer's words still echoed in her head, and Nkiru's smug smile wouldn't leave her mind. How could her parents leave everything to Nkiru? It didn't make sense. Her chest ached with a familiar sting, one she had felt her whole life. From childhood, it had always been Nkiru, the golden girl, the one who could do no wrong. If Nkiru drew a crooked flower, everyone clapped like she had painted the Mona Lisa. When Adana brought home a perfect report card, her parents would just nod and say, "Good. That's what we expect from." Nkiru was praised for existing. Adana was praised for effort that no one ever remembered. When their parents got older, it was Adana who came home early from work to cook, clean, and help her father at the furniture shop. She sanded wood, managed customers, and balanced the books when his hands started trembling from illness. Nkiru only appeared on weekends, usually dressed to impress, taking selfies with the workshop as her rustic background. She'd post them online with captions like family business vibes while Adana stood behind the counter, sweaty and exhausted. But somehow Nkiru always won. On birthdays, she got the biggest cake. At family gatherings, she got the loudest compliment. "Nkiru is such a star," Aunt Ngozi would say proudly, ignoring Adana standing right there, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Even when Adana's designs were featured in a local magazine, her father had only said, "You're doing well, my daughter," before adding, "But you should learn to dress more like Nkiru." The final blow came at the funeral. Nkiru arrived in a sleek black gown and oversized sunglasses, crying loudly for everyone to see. She gave a dramatic speech that had people clapping and wiping their eyes. Adana, who had planned to say something quiet and heartfelt, couldn't even get a word in. Reporters took photos of Nkiru, calling her the devoted niece, while Adana stood at the back, feeling invisible, like a guest at her own parents' farewell. Now, sitting alone in her small apartment, Adana's mind kept circling back to one thought. Her parents weren't perfect, but they weren't cruel. Her father had always told her, "You're my pillar." Her mother used to hum when Adana played the piano. Would they really cut her out of everything? Would they really leave her with nothing but memories? She replayed every detail from the lawyer's office. The nervous twitch in his hand, the way Nkiru avoided eye contact, the slight hesitation before he read the will. Something didn't feel right. Maybe it wasn't just favoritism anymore. Maybe it was manipulation. Adana sat up, her heartbeat quickening. The pain in her chest began to shift into something sharper, determination. For the first time since the reading, she whispered to herself, "No, this can't be the truth." And deep down, she knew the story wasn't over yet. 3 days after the reading, Adana was still numb. She hadn't been sleeping much, only replaying everything in her head, her parents' faces, the lawyer's voice, and Kira's smirk. Lagos traffic hummed outside her apartment window, but she barely noticed. Then, one evening, just as she was about to lock her door for the night, she saw it, a brown envelope lying on the floor. No name, no sender, just her father's handwriting across the front. "For my daughter, when the time is right." Her hands trembled as she picked it up. That handwriting was impossible to mistake, bold, slanted, slightly shaky toward the end, just like it had been when he grew ill. She tore the envelope open and found a flash drive and a small folded note inside. The note was short. "If you're reading this, truth has been buried. dig carefully. Her heart began to pound. She plugged the flash drive into her laptop, her fingers shaking. There were several audio files and a folder named Estate Document. She clicked the first recording. A soft crackle filled the room, then her father's voice, weak but unmistakable. Ngozi says I should sign the new papers, says it's easier this way, he murmured. But I don't understand why Nkiru needs to be added again. Adana already manages everything. Adana froze. Her stomach twisted as she listened. In another recording, he sounded even weaker, almost whispering. They said it's just updating signatures. I was so tired. The medicine makes it hard to think. Tears welled in her eyes. She pressed her hand over her mouth, afraid to make a sound. Her father had trusted his sister, Aunt Ngozi, to handle things honestly. But from these recordings, it was clear something was wrong. He was confused, uncertain, maybe even pressured. She clicked through the scanned documents next. Her father's signature appeared several times, some shaky, some firm. But the last version of the will, the one that supposedly gave everything to Nkiru, looked different. The signature was off, and the witness names didn't match the ones she remembered hearing about before. Her breath quickened. She scrolled through the files again, double-checking each date. The last updated version of the will had been signed just 3 days before his stroke. The same week Nkiru had stayed over, claiming she wanted to help out. Adana leaned back in her chair, her pulse racing. Every piece suddenly fit together. The timing, the lawyer's hesitation, Nkiru's confidence, Aunt Ngozi's constant involvement. It wasn't just favoritism. It was manipulation, maybe even fraud. She looked again at the note, reading her father's words out loud in a shaky whisper. Truth has been buried. Dig carefully. Her eyes hardened with resolve. The grief that had once drowned her was now giving way to something stronger, purpose. Whoever had stolen her inheritance hadn't expected this envelope to find her. But it had. And now Adana knew one thing for sure. Her father had tried to warn her, and she wasn't going to stop until she uncovered everything. The next morning, Adana woke up with a clear goal. The fear and confusion from the night before had settled into quiet determination. She dressed carefully, a crisp white blouse, black trousers, and her mother's old gold earring. She needed to look calm, controlled, and harmless. Her plan was simple. Visit Mr. Babajid, the family lawyer, pretend to be thankful, and ask a few questions that might open cracks in the story. The law office smelled of lemon polish and old paper, just as it had during the will reading. When Adana walked in, Mr. Babajid looked surprised but forced a polite smile. Miss Okari, he said, standing to shake her hand. It's good to see you. How are you holding up? I'm managing, she said softly. I just wanted to thank you for how you handled everything. It can't have been easy. His shoulders relaxed a little. You're very kind. Your parents were fine people. I did my best to carry out their wishes. Adana smiled, pretending to agree. Yes, I know my father liked to keep things organized. I was just wondering, when exactly did he update his will? I didn't even realize there had been a change. Mr. Babajid hesitated. Ah, yes. The final version was signed just 3 days before Chief Okari's stroke. It was all very sudden, you see. 3 days. Exactly as the recordings suggested. Adana's heart thudded, but she kept her expression calm. That must have been difficult, she said lightly. I remember my father mentioning that he liked to record big moments, like document signings. Was there a video of that day? The lawyer froze. His eyes flicked to the desk, then back to her. A video? No, I don't believe there was. We don't record private signings. His voice was tight now, his earlier warmth gone. Adana smiled again, even gentler this time. Oh, I see. No problem. Thank you so much, sir. She stood, shook his hand, and walked out with her heart pounding. His reaction had told her everything she needed to know. That night, she sat at her desk, staring at her father's old laptop, the one she'd taken home after his death. She remembered how predictable he'd been with passwords. After a few tries, she typed Woodcraft 1962, the year he started his furniture shop. The screen blinked, and she was in. Her inbox search led her to a folder titled Legal, Personal. Inside were several drafts of wills, each with different dates. The last draft before the so-called update listed her, Adana Okari, as the sole heir. The property, the shares, everything. Her father had even written a short note in the comments. Adana has always been responsible. She will preserve what we built. Adana sat frozen, staring at the words. Her father had trusted her completely. The new will wasn't his wish. It was a setup. Nkiru's smug confidence, Aunt Ngozi's pushy involvement, Mr. Babajid's nervousness. It all made sense now. She leaned back in her chair, whispering to herself. It wasn't luck. It was fraud. And for the first time, she smiled, not out of happiness, but because she finally had proof that the truth was on her side. Weeks passed, and Lagos couldn't stop talking about Nkiru Okari, the new heiress, living large in the Ikoyi mansion. She had moved in almost immediately after the will was read, changing everything. The once warm family home, filled with her parents' memories, now looked like a nightclub. Gold curtains replaced the old lace ones, loud music blasted every weekend, and expensive cars lined the driveway. Photos of her parties filled social media. Nkiru posing by the pool, champagne in hand, hashtags like #BossLady, #LegacyQueen glowing beneath each post. Adana saw it all but said nothing. She stayed in her small apartment, quiet but focused. Every night, she sat with Tochi Ease, her childhood friend, now a young lawyer known for his sharp mind and calm confidence. He had always believed her story didn't add up, and when Adana showed him the recordings and documents from her father's flash drive, he didn't hesitate. "We'll find every missing piece," he said. Together, they started gathering evidence, emails, signatures, witness statements, and everything that could expose what Nkiru and Aunt Ngozi had done. Meanwhile, Nkiru flaunted her wealth like it would never end. She took over the family furniture shop, but had no idea how to run it. Instead of managing staff or fixing issues, she spent money on flashy renovations and ignored unpaid bills. Adana warned her once, through a polite message, "Check the wiring. It's old and unsafe." Nkiru never replied. One night, Adana was sorting through old files when her phone buzzed. It was a late call from one of her father's former workers, his voice trembling. "Madam Adana, the shop, it's burning." She froze. "What? How?" "The fire started from the back room. The wiring. It's gone. Everything's gone." Adana's hands shook as she grabbed her keys and rushed out. When she reached the site, flames were dying out, but the air was thick with smoke and burnt wood. Her heart broke at the sight. The signboard that once read Okri Furniture Works was now blackened, ashes curling off it like old paper. This was her father's life's work, destroyed in one careless night. But before she could even process the loss, her phone began to buzz again, messages, calls, and notifications flooding in. Nkiru had already gone online, posting a video with fake tears. "It's heartbreaking," she said dramatically, "but I can't help thinking my dear cousin had a hand in this. She's been bitter since the will reading. Jealousy makes people do terrible things." The comments exploded. Some called Adana a witch, others said karma had come for her. She didn't reply. She didn't even post once. Instead, she took screenshots. Every lie, every accusation, every word Nkiru said. Tochi called later that night. "Don't let her pull you into her game," he told her. "The truth is on our side. Let her dig her own grave." Adana looked at the smoke rising from the ruined shop and nodded quietly. She knew he was right. Nkiru thought she had destroyed her completely. But what she didn't realize was that this, the silence, the patience, was Adana's strategy. The fire might have taken the workshop, but the real spark had just been lit. A week after the fire, Adana and Tochi sat in her small living room surrounded by stacks of papers, flash drives, and folders spread across the floor. The air was thick with quiet focus. Tochi had barely spoken for an hour, scanning through her father's old legal files with the precision of a detective. Adana sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through a binder labeled Estate, Confidential. She was tired, but something in her gut told her they were close to finding the missing link, the proof that would turn everything around. Tochi suddenly looked up, his brow furrowed. "Wait," he murmured, reaching for a thin, yellowed envelope tucked between two account statements. It was sealed and stamped with a notary mark, the ink slightly faded but still clear. "This looks official." He carefully opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. At the top was her father's signature, bold and certain. As Tochi read aloud, Adana leaned closer. "It says, should any tampering or undue influence be found regarding my estate, all assets shall automatically revert to my legal heir, my daughter, Adana Okri." The words hung in the air like thunder. Adana blinked, her heartbeat racing. "Wait, what? That clause wasn't in the will Nkiru filed." "Exactly," Tochi said. "This is the original copy, notarized, witnessed, and legally binding. The version Nkiru submitted to court must have been a duplicate. Someone removed this part before filing it." Adana's throat went dry. "Aunt Ngozi," she whispered. It wasn't even a question. She remembered how Aunt Ngozi had handled everything after her father's death. The documents, the meetings, the visits to the lawyer. Always saying, "Don't worry, dear, I'll take care of it." Tochi nodded slowly. She must have kept this hidden. Without this clause, the tampering couldn't be challenged easily in court. But with it, he looked up at her, eyes sharp. "Adana, this changes everything. The law is on your side now." Adana took the letter in her trembling hand. Her father's handwriting, firm and deliberate, stared back at her. Every word felt like a whisper from beyond, telling her he had trusted her all along, that he had tried to protect her even after he was gone. She sat back, tears blurring her vision. He knew something was wrong. He knew they might twist things. Tochi placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Now we have the truth, and the truth is stronger than all their lies." Adana nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. But inside, she wasn't thinking about revenge. She wasn't picturing Nkiru's shocked face or Aunt Ngozi's guilt. What she wanted was bigger. Justice, not punishment. She looked at the letter again and smiled softly through her tears. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered. That night, as she filed the document into a sealed folder marked evidence, she felt something she hadn't in months: peace mixed with power. The storm that had ripped her life apart was beginning to calm, and for the first time, she knew exactly how to take back what was hers. The night of Nkiru's charity gala was electric. Lagos's elite had gathered in the glittering ballroom of the Ikoyi mansion, dressed in sparkling gowns and sharp tuxedos. The chandeliers cast golden light on polished floors, and waiters moved gracefully with trays of champagne. Nkiru stood at the podium, smiling confidently, thanking everyone for attending and bragging about her family legacy that she had inherited. Adana arrived quietly, slipping through the crowd unnoticed. She wasn't invited, but she didn't need an invitation. Dressed simply in a sleek black dress, hair pulled back, she carried a small tablet in her hand. She walked through the crowd with calm determination, her eyes fixed on the stage. Every step felt deliberate, every movement calculated. When she reached the stage, Nkiru laughed, thinking she was just a guest wanting a photo. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," Nkiru began, but Adana interrupted, her voice steady. "Actually, there's something everyone needs to see." Before anyone could react, Adana tapped the tablet, and the projector flickered to life. A familiar voice filled the room, her father's voice, warm and trembling at times, echoing through the grand hall. "I love you, Adana. Don't let them twist what's yours." Gasps filled the room. Phones whipped out, recordings, streaming, buzzing. On the screen, images began flashing. Dates, signatures, scanned documents proving the original will, notarized letters, and clear evidence of forgery. Every file she had collected with Tochi's help was laid bare. Nkiru froze. Her confident smile cracked, faltering as the audience murmured and pointed. Aunt Ngozi, pale and wide-eyed, staggered back, then fainted outright, crashing onto the polished floor. People rushed to help her while others craned their necks toward the screen. Adana didn't shout, didn't scream. She stepped closer to the podium, calm but commanding. "You built lies on the foundation my father made for me," she said clearly, her voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "But truth stands longer than greed." Silence swept the room, heavy and complete. Nkiru tried to speak, tried to regain control, but the words caught in her throat. Phones continued to record, sending the story across social media in real time. The so-called golden girl was exposed in front of the very people she had been flaunting her status to. Adana took a deep breath, looking out over the shocked audience. She felt the weight of every unfair word, every stolen inheritance, and every humiliating memory lift just slightly. Her father's voice had guided her, his foresight had protected her, and now the truth was finally clear to everyone, not just to her. She stepped down from the stage as security and staff helped Aunt Ngozi away. The crowd whispered, murmured, and recorded. But Adana didn't care about the noise. She felt calm, steady, and unshakable. The confrontation was over. She hadn't needed to yell or fight. The truth had spoken for itself. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Reporters jostled in the back, cameras flashing, microphones poised, while family members whispered nervously in the gallery. Adana sat quietly at the front, her hands folded on her lap. Across from her, Nkiru and Aunt Ngozi looked pale and restless, their confident facades crumbling under the weight of the evidence stacked against them. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. Notarized letters, scanned drafts of the original will, audio recordings of her father's voice, and testimony from the lawyer who had helped Adana uncover the fraud. Each piece of evidence painted the same clear picture. The will had been tampered with, and Nkiru and Aunt Ngozi had manipulated the estate for their gain. There was no room for doubt. When the gavel finally came down, the judge's voice was steady and firm. "It is the decision of this court that the assets of the late chief and Mrs. Okuri shall be restored to their legal heir, Adana Okuri. Further, Nkiru Okuri and Ngozi Okuri are hereby charged with will tampering and fraud." A hush fell over the courtroom. Adana felt a rush of relief, but she didn't cheer. She simply exhaled, a quiet, steady breath that felt heavier and lighter all at once. Her parents' home, the furniture business, their jewelry, all were finally hers, rightfully, as her father had intended. Nkiru slumped in her seat, realizing that the financial empire she had been flaunting would crumble under the court's decision. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing and microphones thrust toward her. "Adana, how do you feel?" one shouted. "What does this victory mean to you?" Adana stepped forward calmly, her posture straight, her face serene despite the cameras and shouting. She paused for a moment, letting the questions settle around her. Then she said softly, almost quietly, "I didn't win. Justice did." The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Her words carried more weight than any outburst or emotional speech could have. They saw her strength, her patience, and her composure, the calm that had guided her through months of betrayal, loss, and scheming. Social media exploded with clips of her statement, hashtags trending across Nigeria. Hashtag daughter who outwitted her family. Hashtag justice for Adana. Hashtag truth win. For the first time in months, Adana felt a sense of peace settle in her chest. She had fought not for revenge, but for the truth. And in doing so, she had restored not only her inheritance, but also her parents' honor. She imagined her father smiling, proud of the way she had carried herself, and her mother humming softly, approving of her quiet strength. As reporters continued to crowd around, Adana turned away from the cameras and walked toward the car waiting to take her home. Her steps were steady, purposeful. The storm of lies and betrayal had ended. The law had sided with her, the truth had prevailed, and for the first time, she felt like herself again, calm, grounded, and finally free. Months had passed since the court ruling, and Lagos was beginning to feel like home again for Adana. The city's usual chaos seemed smaller now, quieter, somehow softer around the edges. She had spent the past weeks planning, organizing, and rebuilding, not just her life, but her father's legacy. The first big step was the workshop, where the furniture business had once stood, smoke-stained and broken. Adana now opened Okri Legacy Design. The sign was simple but strong, carved from polished wood and painted in deep green. Inside, the air smelled of fresh timber and varnish. Tools gleamed on racks and workbenches were tidy. But it wasn't just about the business. Adana had made a point to hire single mothers and young apprentices, giving them a chance to learn, earn, and create. She remembered her own struggles growing up and knew firsthand how life could be unfair. She wanted to change that for others. The mansion, too, had changed. Adana moved back in, but it wasn't a house of excess anymore. Rooms once filled with extravagant parties were now bright studios, classrooms, and art spaces. One room in particular was sacred, dedicated to her parents' memory, filled with their photographs, her mother's jewelry displayed in glass cases, and her father's woodworking tools still polished and ready. She would often sit there quietly, remembering their love, their lessons, and the quiet pride they had always shown her. Tochi was at her side through it all. Once her childhood friend, he had become her business partner and close companion. Together, they planned workshops, mentored apprentices, and handled the growing business. But beyond the work, he was her anchor, someone who reminded her that patience and integrity always mattered, even in moments of triumph. Adana's mornings began early, walking through the workshop as sunlight poured through the windows, listening to the hum of saws and the chatter of apprentices learning a craft. Afternoons were spent in the community art center, overseeing classes, helping young artists shape their skills, and ensuring that the mansion was more than a home. It was a place of opportunity, growth, and remembrance. For the first time in years, Adana felt a sense of calm settle over her. The pain of betrayal, loss, and injustice hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, her father's vision, a life filled with purpose, creativity, and care for others, guided every step she took. One evening, as the sun dipped behind Lagos's skyline, Adana stood in the workshop, watching her apprentices work. She smiled softly, feeling the weight of the past lift. The city hummed around her, but here in this space there was peace, there was purpose, and there was finally home. She had rebuilt not just a business, but a legacy, one that reflected the love and values her father had always wanted her to carry forward. It was a quiet afternoon when Adana opened the mailbox and saw a letter with a familiar scrawl in Kira's handwriting. Her stomach tightened for a moment, but she took a deep breath and tore it open. Inside, the words were simple, raw. I was jealous because you were everything I pretended to be. Adana paused, reading the lines over and over. For a fleeting second, anger flared, but she let it go. Years of pain and plotting could have taken control, but not today. She folded the letter carefully, placed it on her desk, and reached for a fresh sheet of paper. Her reply was calm, measured, and truthful. Karma isn't punishment, it's correction. After sealing the envelope, she stood and walked toward the workshop. Outside, the late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long, golden beams over the children's laughter drifted from the community art center she had built within the mansion, mixing with the hum of saws and brushes from the apprentices working inside. The air smelled faintly of sawdust, paint, and sunlight, a comforting reminder that life, in its quiet rhythm, moved on. Adana stopped at the edge of the workshop steps and looked around. This place, once a scene of betrayal and loss, now thrived with creativity, learning, and hope. She felt the weight of the past lift gently off her shoulder. The will that had once stripped everything from her had, indirectly, given her something far more valuable: clarity, peace, and a purpose rooted in love and justice. For the first time in a long while, Adana allowed herself to smile. She breathed deeply, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, the hum of life around her, and the quiet truth that she had not only reclaimed her father's legacy, but had created a future brighter than she had ever imagined. And in that moment, surrounded by sunlight, laughter, and possibility, she felt completely free.